All right, welcome everyone to the Fit Geek Show. We have a very special guest today who specializes in a very unique branch of exercise science, which is medical fitness. We have Jeff Young all the way from Manhattan, New York. So, Jeff, thank you so much for taking time and agreeing to do this podcast and this video.
Absolutely. Excited to be here. Excited to be part of your podcast, and the heavy hitters that you've had on here is impressive. So I'm just definitely glad to be here.
Thank you, thank you. I follow you on Facebook and I've seen your YouTube videos, and the content that you produce is really helpful. And you are so passionate about your topic. You explain it really well, and it is just excellent. And I want more people to know about you so that they can learn from you.
Thank you very I appreciate it. Thank you very much, because as I mentioned, I'm also extremely passionate about this and just want to get the
Yes,
word out.
great. So Jeff Young is an expert in medical fitness, and he's worked with world-class facilities for many years. Jeff, how many years have you totally spent in this branch of exercise science?
Well, I graduated with a degree in kinesiology in 96.
Hmm.
And my first job out of college was at Duke University Medical Center's Diet and Fitness Center, which is the leading it's the leading medical weight loss facility in the United States.
Okay.
So I started right,
Wow.
you know, right out of college,
Hmm.
but then I got into the health club world for about 8 or 9 years. So there was a gap. So the answer to your question is I got into it right away, but then there was a gap for about 8 or 9 years where I was in the health club industry. And then starting in 2006, I got back into it. So I would say a total of about 17 out of my
Wow,
25 years.
that's a lot of experience. And I see that you are also an NSCA CSCS and
Yes.
ACSM EIM. So could you please elaborate on the EIM recognition that you got from ACSM? What is that
Yeah,
exactly?
that actually is more of a recognition as opposed to a certification. And
Okay.
it's basically just so I'm level one, and it's basically just in order to qualify for it, you just have to have certain credentials, a degree, I believe,
Hmm.
in exercise science or related field, and then a certain amount of hours
Okay.
um, working in medical fitness atmosphere.
Okay. Okay. Great. So Jeff, what is medical fitness exactly, and what got you interested to pursue this as a full-time career for so many years?
Yep. So the answer to the first part of your question, there's not really a consensus definition. The way I describe or define medical fitness is it's the proper assessment, prescription,
Hmm.
and progression, or in some cases regression, for individuals who, I break it down into two categories. There's the chronic disease category, and then there's the musculoskeletal joint pain orthopedic category.
Okay.
And but I also, because so many people are walking around, like upwards of about 70% of people walking around, at least here in the United States,
Mm.
suffer from either chronic disease and or orthopedic issues. So medical fitness really applies to just people, trainers training clients in commercial gyms. And so because of that, I kind of further define it and say that it also includes the communication and collaboration with clinicians, which is really missing in the
Mm-hmm.
industry. So I think that's an important part of the definition of medical fitness.
Okay, that's
And then as
interesting.
far as the second part of your question, and
Yes.
how I got into the full time, honestly, I just kind of fell into it. Like I said, I started off first year at Duke Medical Center,
Mm.
then that 8 year gap, and then it was kind of a right place, right time. I just happened to be introduced to a physiatrist who's the head team physician for USA Women's Rugby,
Mm-hmm.
and she was working in a at a facility called Beth Israel Medical Center's Center for Health and Healing. This
Mm-hmm.
was back in about 2005. I
Mm.
started collaborating with her on certain things. I was in a meeting with her in late 2005, and another physiatrist walked in who was the medical director of the facility, and actually he was on the New York Knicks medical team for 14 years, had his own ESPN radio show, etc. High level guy,
Wow.
and I only knew him well enough to kind of say hi and shake his hand, but he walked in the meeting. basically said, you need to call me tomorrow. I call him the next day, and he said, we have a facility that's under construction, which was originally just going to be for physical therapy, but how would you like to come on and create and then manage the fitness component? So that, and then while I was there for 10 years, during which time we merged with Mount Sinai medical or health system, which is, it's either number one or number two largest health system in the United States. And we took over another floor in our building. We added many more components, and we instantly became the most comprehensive academic integrative medicine and medical fitness facility in the United States. So that place was a life changer for me. And it really was just a right place, right time, fell into it. But then while I was there, I just took advantage of the people I was working with and the minds and the mentoring. And that's the reason why I'm able to do the things I'm doing.
Well, that's great. And you mentioned physiatrist. So I've never heard of this term, especially in India.
Yeah.
So who's a physiatrist?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because I never heard of physiatrist either until I started working with them. So a physiatrist can either be an MD, a medical doctor, or a DO, a doctor of osteopathic medicine. And they specialize in diagnosing and assessing musculoskeletal injuries, issues, and disorders. So they're kind of like an orthopedist who doesn't perform surgery. So I actually recommend, so like if you have an injury, or if someone has an injury where, if it's an ACL tear or something like that, where you know you need surgery, you go to orthopedist. But if it's a situation where you don't need it or you may not need it, I'd actually recommend a physiatrist. More specifically, they're known as physical medicine and rehabilitation, PM&R. And I'd actually recommend a physiatrist, because they're not going to be, since they don't perform surgery, they're not going to say, oh, you need to go under the knife. And they're going to be more apt to seek out non-surgical interventions if that's the better choice.
Okay, because when I first went to the US, I lived in Kirksville, Missouri, which is the birthplace of osteopathic medicine.
Okay, yeah.
And A.T. Still University was first started there. In that city. So that's when I first found out about osteopathic medicine. Before that, I never knew what an osteopath was.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I was 10 years into my career and didn't know this stuff either. So yeah.
Okay.
It's actually kind of a shame. And they're osteopathic, doctors of osteopathic medicine are frustrated about this, because they're really along the same lines as MDs. It's just that people haven't heard of them. They go through the same basic schooling.
Yep, that's true. And today I learned something new again, physiatrist. I never knew about this before.
Yeah. Well, at least I was able to teach you something.
Yes. And Jeff, what are the qualifications that one needs in order to qualify to become a medical fitness professional? Any certifications or degrees that you require?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer that one from my personal bias and perspective again, because once again, there's not a consensus. And since medical fitness is technically, exercise or program designed for people who suffer from disease and orthopedic issues, which once again applies to commercial gyms and trainers who unfortunately really aren't qualified, are still training people with these conditions. When I was at using Mount Sinai, the Center for Health and Healing facility that I was at for 10 years as an example, the hospital requirements were that you had to have at least a bachelor's degree in exercise science or a related field. And you had to be certified. You had to have a certification through one of the two governing bodies, either the American College of Sports Medicine or the National Strength and Conditioning Association. Whether you had other certifications or not was fine, but those were requirements: a degree, a related degree, and at least a higher level governing body certification. So that's really what my bias is. Having said that, the argument, which it's hard to argue against, is that there's a zillion people out there with degrees who aren't really qualified. And there's plenty of trainers out there who don't have degrees who actually are qualified. So unfortunately in the fitness field, it's this big gray area mix, blah, blah, blah. But I'd argue back and just say that while that's true, generally speaking, the ones with the degrees tend to stand out more from the overall crowd. Although obviously there's more to it. But those are the basic qualifications. And also let me also say experience. Let me go
Um,
further real quick into my
yes, yes.
answer. If you, let's say you wanted to work with me,
Mhm.
um, it, I have, I have my, I have a 3 interview process followed by a mentoring process
Okay.
before they're allowed to take on clients. So the first interview is really just a kind of a getting to know you and talk about your resume and your background, stuff like that. But in the second and third interview, I test the crap out of the candidates, and
Okay.
I start to ask them their understanding of periodization
Mhm.
for able-bodied, and then I'll throw in some case studies. You know, what would you do if someone had diabetes, if they had multiple sclerosis, blah blah blah. And anyways, and then in the third interview, I would take them out on the floor and I'd show me how you do an assessment, show me how you your understanding of squats, deadlifts, lunges, throw in some orthopedic case assessments. Now, what if someone had knee issues, low
Mhm.
back issues, stuff like that. So I look at your experience and your ability to speak the language
Mhm.
and actually apply that stuff as part of the competency and qualification process, much along with and probably much more so than what your degree is in and were you a Harvard grad and
Mhm.
and all that stuff. So all that stuff on the paper is what got you in for the interview,
Mhm.
but now I want to see that you can actually speak the language. So that's how I go about it.
Yes, and I've heard this from many other speakers that they might have come across people who have like, uh, degrees from great colleges, but then when it comes to communication, they don't fare that well. And so you have to have like
Absolutely.
a balance in everything.
Absolutely. I want to see that they look me in the eye, that they give me a strong handshake, that
Mm,
they have social skills, all that stuff.
okay, awesome. And Jeff, moving forward, which diseases and conditions are included in the scope of practice of a medical fitness professional?
So I'll start by saying all of the above.
Okay.
But you know, since I'm kind of on the non-acute side, and that's where my passion is, not so much the uncontrolled diseases and where they absolutely need the acute clinical care.
Mhm.
So that's going to obviously be included in medical fitness, where you have you need neurological rehab or cardiac rehab or something like that. You have uncontrolled diabetes, some sort of uncontrolled hypertension or other condition. So those are going to be included in
Mhm.
that. But my passion is for the ones who either don't need clinical care, or they were released and discharged from clinical care,
Okay.
but they still suffer from the condition. So my answer to your question is that it's pretty much any disease across the continuum of disease, an orthopedic issue or joint pain across the whole continuum,
Mhm.
but where, once again, from my standpoint, they suffer from it, but they don't need ongoing clinical care. They're ambulatory, they're not in a wheelchair, things like that.
Okay. And what about metabolic disorders like diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, or even cancer? So, do some medical fitness experts work with these diseases as well?
Absolutely. I was ridiculously fortunate last spring, the spring of this year, to have been brought on to help completely restructure an exercise science course at the bachelor degree level, the undergraduate level, for a local college,
Okay.
um, uh, where the title of the course was Exercise Prescription for
Mhm.
Special Populations, or in other words, medical fitness. And the textbooks that we used were American College, ACSM, American
Okay.
College of Sports Medicine textbooks. One of them it's called the CDD4, it's the Chronic Diseases and Disabilities Textbook for Fourth
Mhm.
Addiction. And one of the things I love about that particular textbook, which is an answer to your question, is that it's extremely rare that someone can't do some form of exercise. If they can do activities of daily living, then now you literally have your start point.
Mm.
That's from a volume and intensity standpoint. And so if they can move and they can do activities of daily living, then we can start with that and we can progress them from there. And so really, yes, the answer is yes. Cancer, um, metabolic conditions, exercise is going to help all of the above. You just have to find the appropriate start points
Mhm.
and then the appropriate rates of progression exercise selection and things like that.
Okay. So since these two fields sort of overlap, as far as I think, physical therapy and medical fitness, do these two professionals like clash sometimes with their thought processes, or does that happen, or do they
Yeah.
work hand in hand?
You're gonna end up putting me in. It's actually kind of a position that I enjoy. If you're watching my posts on social media, but it's a little controversial as well.
Hmm.
They absolutely clash, and absolutely shouldn't be that way. And
Hmm.
it's a real huge passion of mine, because although I work generally speaking in medical fitness, and I've worked alongside family medicine, internal medicine, cardiology, etc.,
Hmm.
for the most part, who I'm working closest with are physiatrists and physical therapists, chiropractors, and occupational therapists. So I work closest alongside sports medicine practitioners,
Okay.
and it pains me that we clash, because look, I'm painting a broad brush, and it probably isn't completely fair, but just to get my point across, a lot of people in strength and conditioning think that, and picking on physical therapists or physiotherapists, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call them, for no other reason than just to pick on them to get my point across. We tend to think that they're too conservative,
Hmm.
and it's too light, low volume, stuff like that, and you're not strengthening. It's not this ongoing total body strengthening of the tissue. But
Hmm.
from their standpoint, you strength and conditioning coaches are too aggressive. You don't understand proper form. You're the reason why they come to us and get injured, blah, blah, blah. So here we are, clashing, when instead we should be merging, because the truth is, like you just said,
Hmm.
there's way more similarities than there are
Hmm.
differences. And I'm actually in the process of creating a video right now. I'm actually going to be launching it on my YouTube channel later today on this exact topic, where the gist of what I say is, um, since in physical therapy, once the swelling and inflammation is down and or gone, and mobility is restored or nearly restored, what do? They strengthen and work on proper form,
Hmm.
and we do that as well. So we just need to we strength and conditioning coaches just need to do a better job of speaking their language,
Hmm.
and they need to do a better job of speaking our language,
Yeah.
so that we can see that we actually do go hand in hand,
Hmm.
and we are actually an extension of physical therapy, and
Hmm.
we should be seen as an extension of physical therapy. All we have to do is just piggyback off what they're doing,
Hmm.
start with the appropriate exercise selection, the appropriate loads, and then progress them from there.
Excellent. Very, very nicely put, because it's really easy to offend someone with this kind of topic. But in India, at least, these two fields are pretty well. Physiotherapists are pretty old, in the sense that they have been working from a long time. But strength and conditioning coaches, this field is a little new. So it's just a matter of time, and I hope that since it's the beginning of one career, they just from the beginning work hand in hand, which is happening quite a bit, and I hope that happens in the future as well.
Yeah, I'm just really fortunate as well to be involved with some medical organizations
Mm.
here. One's called the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and the other one is actually one of the governing bodies in physiatry, the American Osteopathic College of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. I'm really involved as a subject matter expert with both organizations, and I really try to use those as platforms to
Hmm.
get my point across, that we need to, excuse me, we need to merge and work with each other and stop button heads.
That's great. That's
and
great.
and also and also to do exactly what you just said, to
Yeah.
show that, hey, we exist. Absolutely, the fitness field unfortunately has way too many unqualified fitness professionals within it, but
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that there's not a subset of the population that is qualified, and you
Yeah.
need to seek us out, and we need to seek you out, and start collaborating with each other.
It's great that you brought this up, because in India, ACSM and SCA, they have just arrived about, say, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So before that, they were like local certifications, which weren't too governed, or like didn't have a good structure. So I think about 70% or 80% of the Indian fitness population, I mean the India's fitness professionals, are unqualified. If you see, like if you
Right.
count that as a benchmark.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of
It's
time.
really frustrating. It's frustrating for those of us who took the time,
Yeah,
to not only get the degrees, but also just to stay on top of research and
true.
to try to do things the right way.
Hmm.
And here we are from a clinician standpoint and from a public standpoint, they don't really see us as being different. We're just another trainer. And
Yeah.
here, the yous of this world and the me's of this world are really trying to separate ourselves
Hmm.
and say, no, we aren't just trainers. We're trainers, yes, but we're above and beyond that.
Yeah.
So it's a constant battle that has driven me through my 25 year career.
Wow. Jeff, do you have any case studies or examples of your clients or other people that you've seen who have shown like astonishing results in terms of maintaining their conditions with exercise?
So it's crazy that you asked that because I have, fortunately, since I've been doing this for so long, I could give a long list of examples of you know uh, both men and ladies in their
Hmm.
mid 70s, low 80s, who with all kinds of conditions who have reversed them, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm actually going to use my wife
Okay.
as the answer to your question, partially because if I don't, she'll kill me. And I don't want to be killed. But I don't know if you've seen any of my posts about her on social media,
Yes,
but
I
she
have.
was diagnosed. Yeah, so she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis
Yes.
16 and a half years ago.
Mm.
And I'll obviously give you the short answer because this could be a really long story, but the gist of it is that when she was first diagnosed, it really hit us both like it came out of nowhere,
Hmm.
and our worlds were completely turned around. And we only knew it as a progressive, degenerative neurological disease that puts a lot of people in wheelchairs. So it was
Mm.
really scary. And for the first 5.5 years after she was diagnosed, um, her body, I mean, basically she was just getting sicker and sicker,
Mm.
and she was spiraling downhill, daily flare-ups. It was really horrible for her, and it was horrible for me to watch and feel helpless. And when she was first diagnosed, I wasn't working at this Mount Sinai Center for Health and Healing facility, so she exercised, and but it's low level cardio, low level strength training stuff. But once I started this facility, and I now had minds to pick, and I
Mm.
started, and also I was just learning,
Mm.
just being referred patients and stuff like that. Um, Eventually, I felt confident enough, not right away, it took several years probably, but I felt confident enough to put her on a progressive resistance training program. And then basically in 2010, about a decade ago, so for her, she was 6 years into this and not doing well at all. And we at a gym, we ran into actually, he was a state champion power lifter who kind
Okay.
of mentored me a little bit on his view of like deadlifts and squats and progressions and stuff like that. And we started slowly applying this to her and just really using RPE scales,
Hmm.
like an RPE driven program. Just how do you feel today? If you're not feeling so good, we're going to back off. You're feeling better today, we're going to take advantage of it and
Hmm.
push just a little bit. And the tortoise wins the race. And so here's someone who, back in 2010 was, as an example, she was deadlifting like 95 pounds. She weighs like 125. She's 5'4",
Okay.
125. She's in her mid 40s. So back then she was in her mid 30s, and she was deadlifting like 95 pounds. Only 3/4 of her body weight
Hmm.
for like 6 reps, 8 reps, etc. Just to use an objective point of reference. And now here she is deadlifting. Um, 265
Wow.
pounds, in other words, more than twice her body weight
Oh yeah.
for 4, 5, 6 reps, squatting 185, hip thrusting well over 300 pounds, et cetera, et cetera. But more specifically and more importantly, as now that we can, in hindsight 2020, you can totally look back and see that the stronger and more conditioned she got,
Hmm.
the more this disease started to the disease and the associated symptoms started just completely reverse. And she went from having daily flare-ups that were horrific to they started just being every once in a while. Now, obviously, she had changes in her diet too and other things. I don't want to give exercise and strength and conditioning 100% of the credit, but it gets a ton of the credit.
Hmm.
And so yeah, so so here we are today, and she pretty much never has. She'll get like maybe a flare up a small flare up once per year,
Wow.
or sometimes, or even actually less than that. So she's pretty much reversed the course and the associated symptoms of what for most people is a progressive, degenerative, puts you in a wheelchair type of disease. So
Hmm.
it's been amazing for me to watch, amazing for her to experience.
Well, that's a great example because I'm aware multiple sclerosis can be really painful in the future. And if a
Yep.
person can reverse it, I mean, nothing like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And let me just add that,
Yes.
we could sit here and break down each type of like cardiovascular, metabolic, pulmonary disease,
Hmm.
et cetera, and then explain why exercise has a positive um, effect on it. But just looking at neurological diseases like Parkinson's and MS, I think it's important for viewers to know that a huge reason why especially strength training is so important for these types of diseases
Hmm.
is because your nervous system fires your muscles, and the more active your nervous system is, the more you aren't going to hit without having a pharmaceutical intervention, which we don't want, because then you're going to have all the symptoms of that.
Hmm.
with Without having a pharmaceutical intervention, you can't heal the nervous system if you aren't activating and training it.
Hmm.
And the way to activate it and train it is through strength training. And the heavier the load, the reason why it needs to be progressive strength training is because the heavier the load, the
Hmm.
more you activate it and train it. And so it's critical if you want to prevent, manage, or reverse neurological conditions that you strength trains, because that's how you're going to train and activate your electrical grid, is what I like to call it. It's an electrical grid, and we got to light it up.
True.
So, and she's a perfect example of what happens when you do that.
That's completely true. I completely agree with you because the more progressive you lift, progressively you lift, the more electrical activation and the more muscle fibers they fire, and then the neuromuscular coordination increases. That's perfectly,
Yep.
yeah. Okay. Uh, and then Jeff, you had made a post about this the other day, and then I had contacted you about certifications having a little bit of limitation in terms of training a person, but then you do require a certification to be qualified. So how can fitness professionals be up to date? Because I know that you have to stay updated every 3 years. You need to get your CECs done, be top of the game. But it gets a little difficult in maintaining the knowledge level because every day new research is coming out. So what is
Yeah.
the solution to this?
Yeah. I mean, that's also something that we could probably talk about for an hour. My short answer is I view certifications as, not that they don't have value. They definitely have value, but but they exist on a totem pole. You're going to have your higher level ones,
Hmm.
such as your governing body, ACSM and NSCA, and then you're going to have your lower level ones. And I'm not going to name names
Yeah.
because I don't want to upset anyone.
Mm.
But the point is that they fall on the totem pole, and that no matter which one you get, they're still entry level, in the sense that just because you got certified in something doesn't make you an expert at something,
Mm.
in that certification, whether it's a general CPT or whether it's a specialty certification. You don't get certified and you wake up the next day and you're an expert in it. You still need the experience and the mentoring and to stay up on research and stuff like that. So that's kind of why I'm passionate about this topic as well, because a lot of people like to list all their certifications they have at the end of their name and
Yeah.
all that stuff. But for clinicians and for the public, it doesn't really matter. For most of them, it doesn't matter a whole lot. What it tells me is, I where I think the value is if, once again, I'm going to hire someone to work for me. I'd like to see that where on that totem pole did you go? Did you go for one of the higher level certifications? Because that's going to at least tell me a little something about you. Or did you decide to go for one of the lower level certifications?
Mm.
Um, so the point is that they're entry level. Like, for instance, just using like the National Academy of Sports Medicine as an example, there's things I like about it and there's things I don't. What I don't like about it is I think it's just too conservative and kind of tends to turn trainers into pseudo physical therapists,
Mm.
um, which I was guilty of. So I'm pointing fingers back at me. But what I like about it is it helps you speak the language a little bit of sports medicine and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like about certifications in general is it will help you speak the language a little bit better. And it can be nice foundational knowledge, but now going to the rest of your question, you have to continue your education. And yes, a lot of trainers are guilty of just piling on specialty certs, prenatal, postnatal, geriatric, blah, blah, blah. You can get you don't have to spend the money for that. If you want to do that so you can put some more letters after your name, go for it. But you should be getting on PubMed, Google Scholar. You should be looking at, you should be regularly looking at the journals when they come out every month. The NSCA Strength and Conditioning Journal and Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, the ACSM's Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise, the physiology journals, the sports medicine journals. And just, what I do, because it can seem overwhelming on the surface. What I do is at the beginning of every month, I have a whole list of favorite journals, and I just look them all up, and I look at all the titles of the articles in that particular journal, knowing that I'm actually only going to be interested in 1, 2, or 3, most likely. So it's actually really not that overwhelming. You just you look at all the articles, you look at the ones that apply to you, and then you start digging deeper into that. But I think that trainers need to be a zillion times better at staying on top of research journals, learning how to read them, narrative reviews, systematic reviews, meta-analysis, et cetera, et cetera. And then one other thing is mentors. The reason why I have gotten to the point where I'm at, where I'm able to do things like this, and I'm able to work with organizations and stuff like that, isn't so much because I'm a genius, because I'm not. It's because of the environments that I worked in, the mentors that I had, and the brains I was able to pick. So your degrees and your certification set you up on a foundation and everything. But if you want to move forward in the field, you got to network, and you got to get good mentors and pick their brains and hopefully work in higher level atmospheres. Learn academic type learning atmospheres, and not. I'm going to pick on gyms for a second, and the whole sell. That's not going to help your knowledge and skill at all. When your management's telling you to do is you didn't make your numbers this month, you got to sell. It's killing the field.
True. I agree with you, because when I first applied for a job after my graduation, the only main question that the person asked me was, okay, your qualifications are okay, you've done some experience, you've worked with a few people, but have you done any sales? So I said, no, I've never done sales, and I didn't get the job. I did not get it because of that.
Can I tell you, since I live in New York City, which is a mecca of gyms and health clubs.
Yes.
So once again, I graduated in '96, and I can honestly say, I'm being 100% honest, I never even heard of the sell and entertain your client mantra. I literally didn't even know it existed until 2007. I was 11 years into my career, and I just happened to be fortunate to work in atmospheres where we weren't told to sell and entertain your client. And I did my first ever guest lecture, seminar and workshop at a local gym called New York Sports Club. And that's that was the first time I ever heard this phrase, to sell and entertain. And anyways, I started to do this regularly then, and I was invited many times at different types, like at Equinox, Crunch, a lot of the major gyms, and I'd be invited into their monthly fitness staff meetings, where they would introduce me and say, hey, next week Jeff's going to be here to give us a seminar and workshop. And I'd hang out for the whole staff meeting, and I'd see that it didn't matter what gym I went to, it was 100% on sales. In other words, where was the continuing ed? Like, it literally just didn't even exist. It was just, hey, John Smith, made his numbers last month, and they put a little medal around his neck or something like that. But the rest of you guys aren't doing what you need to do, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, nah, man, this industry is just getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Really frustrating.
So do you think in order to like have experience in selling as well, because that's where the industry is going now, some bachelor's or master's courses should have a certain selling courses or maybe some business courses for their students?
Absolutely. 100%. But
Okay.
I'm gonna split this my answer to this into two categories.
Yeah.
One, what you just asked is gonna apply to most fitness
Hmm.
trainers because you do need social skills and the ability to understand how to effectively approach someone,
Hmm.
you know, and uh, sell your services and all that
True.
stuff to acquire a new client, etc. But in medical fitness, and this is something else I'm just ridiculously passionate about. And in this, I'm going to mention again. So there's a medical organization called the American College of Lifestyle Medicine,
Hmm.
and I founded and I chair a fitness and medicine group within this organization. We have a Facebook page. We have about 1,100 members. Out of the 1,100 members, I'd say approximately 700 are clinicians actually
Oh,
across the continuum of care, and then the rest of them are like health coaches and exercise specialists. And one of the things that I really try to drive across in this group and just generally speaking is we wouldn't have to sell so much. It's still important and we
hmm.
still need to know the concepts, but we wouldn't have to sell so much if there was if the gap was bridged between clinicians and exercise specialists, because if
Oh,
clinicians were doing their job,
hmm.
they would be referring their patients to
Correct.
us,
Hmm.
which would so I literally receive 99% of my clients from through clinician referral. So
Hmm.
I am one of the I have to be an extremely rare example of someone who's 25 years into his career, and I've never had to sell. I've never had to sell because I've always been in environments
Hmm.
where the selling was done for me, and by the time they get to me, all I have to do is just make them feel comfortable, get their
Hmm.
trust, show them that I'm knowledgeable and all that stuff, and move forward from there. So I'm since this topic is medical fitness, I think that any clinicians who are watching this, it's part of your job to move your patients through the behavior stages of change
Hmm.
and collaborate with exercise specialists and refer them off to us.
That's great. That's great advice. That was my next question, actually. How can medical fitness professionals work hand in hand with doctors to help their clients manage their conditions? So, do you have any
Yeah.
specific advice?
Yeah, for this particular question, I wish that this were about 30 days from now, because I'm currently working with another guy named Jeff,
Okay.
who is I'm collaborating with this guy. He is the incoming chair of the board of directors for the Medical Fitness Association.
Okay.
And we're actually working on for this American College of Lifestyle Medicine group. I recently launched what I'm calling a patient referral subcommittee, and he happens to oversee 6 extremely successful medical fitness facilities here in the United States, and has a lot of experience with this. I do too, but he's got some experience in some areas that I don't have,
Mm.
and this is actually one of them. So I have some experience with this, but this is actually a topic that he and I are talking about right now, because part of the answer to your question is, the truth is doctors are, you know, by and large, too busy,
Hmm.
and it's just the truth. And so how are we going to connect with doctors when they're too busy to even be able to talk to us? And so part of the answer to your question is, you got to get to the mid-level person. You got to get to the front desk admin. You got to get to the nurse, the physician assistant, the physical therapy assistant, something like that.
Hmm.
And and the truth is, this is where your social skills are going to count. And try to just get in, have some sort of presentation to grab their attention, and try to get in so that you can do like a lunch and learn,
Hmm.
or some sort of in service for them, as a way to then explain what you do, why you're different, sell your services. The system is set up against this. And so it's a really hard for me to answer this question with
Hmm.
some like guaranteed this is going to work, this is what you do type of thing. We exercise specialists need to be more proactive. This is where we need to be proactive because they just don't have the time
True.
to seek us out for the most part. So we need to be proactive, get in there, have a spiel, but use our spiel to try to get a lunch and learn or an in-service or something like that. And then you can go from there.
That's great advice. Even though you said that there's no like cookie cutter approach to it, but still that makes a lot of sense because if you can sell your services to the person who knows the doctor the most well, which is usually their assistant, and then they can,
Yes,
they have a lot of confidence in them. So then if they refer us to them, nothing like that.
that's exactly right. And a lot of times, like the physician assistant or the nurses actually spend a little bit more time with the
Mm,
patient than the doctor. The doctor might
mm,
only be spending 10, 15, 20 minutes, where the nurse or physician assistant actually has a little bit of time for some of that casual, candid conversation.
mm-hmm.
I'm actually working with a physician assistant right now who's my liaison. She works at a cardiology facility in a different state actually,
Okay.
and she's kind of like my liaison to the cardiologist that runs the facility.
Well,
And so yes, the mid-level person is probably more important to grab their attention than to try to go for the doctor and
mm-hmm.
just be frustrated 90% of the time.
Mm. And Jeff, which are some organizations that provide credible certifications for medical fitness?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the two governing bodies once again: the ACSM, NSCA.
Mm-hmm.
The NSCA has their CSPS, the Certified Special Population Specialist, and even their CPT within the curriculum. It covers at least general concepts and guidelines and principles for metabolic disease and cardiovascular and orthopedic and stuff like that. And then ACSM obviously is a kind of a medically based
Mm-hmm.
fitness organization, so they're going to go a lot deeper into medications and your standard guidelines, especially for metabolic, renal, cardiovascular, pulmonary disease, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So they're going to be at the top two. And really here in the United States, the two most popular health club certification or certifying bodies are ACE, the American Council on Exercise, and NASM, the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And they have, like for instance, ACE has a medical exercise specialist, MES certification. So that's going to be up there on the list. And then NASM is more of a orthopedic,
Mm.
corrective exercise specialist, stuff like that. I with all of the above, there's things I like about them all, and there's things I don't like about them all. And I'm not going to, get into all that stuff and
Yeah.
fire people up right now. But in answer to your question, those are going to be your top four.
Okay.
And they're also just the four that I'm most familiar with. And but also the person just needs to keep in mind, yes, get your certification. Yes, get that baseline knowledge. But don't act like you're some sort of specialist just because you got a cert. I'm CSCS. You know what? I don't train athletes, for the
Mm.
most part. And I keep my CSCS up, so I can put CSCS next to my name and all that stuff because I know it helps me with my credibility.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, I know enough that I could train mid-level athletes,
Mm-hmm.
but your higher level athletes, I'll totally admit I can't do it.
Mm.
So you aren't an expert just because you have a cert, and that applies to me too.
Mm. Thank you for being truthful. I mean, that helps a lot. Okay. So is exercise really medicine? And if yes, then why?
Yep. So um, exercise in general, and now we'll break that down into cardio and strength training. Exercise in general has a positive effect on every single system in the body, every single one. And now shifting over to resistance training, strength training, whatever you want to call it. Strength training is the biggest bang for your buck mode of exercise. It has a positive effect on more systems in the body than any other form of exercise. And so yes, so because of that, exercise is medicine, because since it has a positive effect on every system in the body, especially resistance training, therefore it can prevent issues or
Mm.
conditions. it can help manage and control them, and it can reverse them. So we could get into the specifics as to why it has a positive effect on pulmonary disease and improving your oxygen consumption and, et cetera, et cetera. We could get into all the details, but absolutely, exercise is medicine. And that's the reason why. In a nutshell, it's because it has a positive effect on every single system in the body.
That's great. A lot of people need to listen to this today because I don't know about the US, but at least in India, I've seen there are a few people who take pride in taking medication, thinking that's the best way to go, and they would
Right.
like sort of actually take pride in it that, oh, I'm on this medication, it's going to solve all my problems, rather than taking medication and also focusing on exercising, because the combination of the two can help you get rid of the situation. I mean, the condition.
That's exactly right. Things just need to be flip-flopped.
Yeah,
Exercise, to me, obviously diet, is
true.
right there.
Yes.
Some people might say 50-50. I actually lean just a little bit more towards the exercise side.
Mhm.
As being, I'd argue it's a little bit more important. I don't want to sit here and make it sound like I'd advocate for a bad diet, because I absolutely wouldn't.
Mhm.
But I'm just saying that, if I was to debate somebody, I would argue that exercise is just a little bit
Mhm.
more important. But things need to be flip-flopped in the sense that we should be using exercise and diet as first line interventions, and then the pharmaceuticals
Mhm.
as needed, rather
Mhm.
than the pharmaceutical as the first line intervention and all the associated symptoms.
Mhm.
And then for some reason, exercise and diet kind of being thrown in the background. It's just truly unbelievable.
True. And Jeff, where can we find your content, and what kind of services do you provide?
Yeah. So the first part of your question, my YouTube channel, JY Kines, so it's JYKINES. Um, and I'm really, because I'm involved with these medical organizations, and a big thing I'm doing for them is creating video content, um, educational content. And so I'm just posting the same stuff on my YouTube channel. So it's kind of a new channel. I currently have about 60 to 65 videos up, but I'm going to be creating videos like on a weekly basis now. So
Hmm.
this is something that I'm really trying to launch. Would love if the viewers would check out my YouTube video. I'm sorry, YouTube channel, and subscribe. And then otherwise, I'm actually not on IG a whole lot, Instagram. I'm old school, I'm in my mid 50s, man, and I would actually be on it more if I didn't have to post a picture and a video every single time I post something. Like, to me, that's the annoying part. Sometimes I just want to post the words
Mhm.
and not the picture and the video along with
Mm.
it. So really the place to find me is YouTube and my Facebook.
Mhm.
Um, I tweet a little bit. I should tweet. I'm probably going to try to do Twitter and Instagram more, but right now it's Facebook and YouTube. And then remind me of the second part of your question. It
Yes.
was,
What kind of services do you provide? I
uh,
know you have a website.
yeah. So I'm actually moving. I'm actually in a major transition phase in my career right now, where I'm trying to move away from in-person training.
Okay.
I'm actually just kind of holding on to my main long-term clients, and I'm currently not even taking new clients. And I'm
Okay.
moving over to a virtual based, and where I'm different. Um, and people would have to email me, I guess, for more information on this if they're interested. Maybe you could just give my email address or whatever.
Sure.
But where the niche that I'm trying to capture, and where I think I'm different, is what I don't do is online Zoom workouts.
Hmm.
Instead, what I've found is that in the past 15 years that I've really been working in clinical settings, that most of the patients who are referred to me actually don't want mid or long-term trainers, because they either can't afford it, or
Hmm.
for whatever reason, most of them actually fall under the umbrella of, they want to know how to get started safely and
Hmm.
properly. They want to be started off on the right foot. And so that's the services that I provide right now. I provide educational 5-packs and 10-packs for the most part, where I will go over um, the fit principle for flexibility training, for aerobic training, and then I'll spend a lot more time in detail on resistance program design. obviously individualize it, find out what they have access to, home
Mhm.
exercise, gym, what are your conditions. I have a huge library, probably a couple hundred videos of, so we can still do stuff in real time, like check
Mhm.
form and set them up on a program and all that stuff. But I'm not like doing, counting reps and doing
Mhm.
that type of workouts. It's more the 5, 10, 15 session, get you started, and then you can
Mhm.
check in with me at your convenience type of thing.
Okay.
Those are the services I provide now.
Okay, that's great. And Jeff, would you like to add anything else to this conversation before we wrap it up?
Nope. You know what? You covered everything. Your questions were great. Seriously. Questions were great. You covered everything. Once again, I just appreciate the opportunity. Being mixed in with some of the heavy hitters that you've had is pretty cool. And I hope that people know more about medical fitness now. And the only other thing I'll say is that
Yes.
I love to help. So if
Hmm.
anyone wants to email me or get in touch with me, um, you know, I would if anyone has questions about anything, I would love to answer that.
That's great. Jeff, thank you so much again for taking time and doing this podcast. It will be available on IGTV, Facebook, my page, Fit Geek Show. It'll be available on all the major podcasting platforms and YouTube. So
Yep.
I'll just share the link
Hey,
with you.
absolutely. And you know
Yes.
what? Keep kicking butt, man, because you are, I don't know how you're getting these big dogs, man, but it's pretty impressive. So you keep doing your thing,
Thank
keep
you.
kicking butt, and keep getting the word out.
Thank you so much. And you have a great day ahead. I hope you keep
All
safe.
right. All right. You too. Take care.